Good morning, Bitcoin. Today is Thursday, May 27th, 2021. My name is Thomas Hunt, and welcome to the 5th anniversary of Craig Wright not providing proof of being Satoshi Nakamoto. As you can see from the graphic here, we're still waiting for Craig Wright to sign a transaction. We're joined today by Arthur Van Pelt, a researcher into not Satoshi Nakamoto, who's been following this on Twitter and keeping you updated for years now as we have waited patiently for the proof of Satoshi Nakamoto. How's it going, Arthur? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me for the second time. Yeah, great to be back.
Now, we did put out some tweets today. There was a possibility that Craig Wright could prove that he was Satoshi in the time between when I announced the show and when we launched the show, but that did not happen. We did not receive any proof today. Did you receive any proof by any chance?
Nope.
No proof was received.
And it's never going to happen either.
I don't think so either, but we'll see how it goes. So let's go ahead and go all the way back to the beginning of the Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto story, and maybe even a little bit before that. I was fortunate in 2015. I got to go to the Bitcoin Investor Conference in Las Vegas. Now, what's interesting about this is that there was a huge conference in Las Vegas called the Money 2020 Conference. And I got to go to that one the next year, but I didn't go to that one. I went to this smaller one called the Bitcoin Investor Conference. And it turned out that was where all the cool stuff happened. It was a pretty incredible conference looking back at it now. I got to meet Nick Szabo and like meet him for real. Like we hung out. Like, not that I know him now or that he'd remember me at all, but we hung out. It was cool. And so he made a speech. As you can see here, he's making a speech. I was also able to film this speech and put it on the internet for you at the Mad Bitcoins channel. And then I was on a panel with Bitcoin Belle, Stephanie Murphy, Professor Joseph Salerno, and my friend Blake Anderson. And that was really cool. We were on a panel together at the conference. And then there was another panel called the All-Star Panel, where Ed Moy, who I think was a Treasury Secretary, used to work at the Federal Reserve, like real legit, normal real world money guy, Ed Moy, Joseph VaughnPerling, I don't recall him, Trace Mayer, certainly an interesting character these days. It's interesting how time changes. Nick Szabo, again, one of the possibilities for Satoshi for a long time. There's been that matching of the semantic analysis of his sentence structure analysis. They thought he might have been the one. And then this strange character showed up from Australia via video conference called Dr. Craig Wright. And let's listen to just a little bit of Bitcoin Belle asking him a question and Dr. Craig Wright's response.
And Dr. Craig, did you want to say something about that?
I think everyone continues to think too small. I mean, the homomorphic properties of ECC basically mean that we can exchange a cryptographic key, a symmetric key, and encrypt documents, load those, store them as a function that we can relate to on the blockchain itself. But more than that, we can actually link it into things like IPsec, and we can build firewall policies that are transmitted because of purchasing a token. And by tokenizing all these things, by tokenizing access, we can then take our access via the blockchain, shared keys, and because the nature of ECC, we can actually have your public key by my secret key equals the value under point multiplication, point addition of the opposite. So my public key by your secret key, we can take a hash of that, use a deterministic function, and then we can actually find a shared hash that we can both recalculate. So if we're talking about things like access to websites, digital rights management, we have all that capability actually there. So the majority, I mean, we're still thinking it's just money. There's so much more.
So can you tell me, because you've now moved your operation, your family and your business and everything from Australia to London, and I saw that you were doing some things in Iceland and things. So why did you do that? And I assume that it's for the purpose of the advantages to Bitcoin. Sorry, we just kind of lost some color there. Okay.
Well, Iceland's because of power. It's much cheaper in Iceland to run computers, and the main one that we've got at the moment is called Tulip, and Tulip's number 15 in the top 500 supercomputers globally. So
Your computer is named Tulip? Is that what you said?
Tulip.
Okay.
Yeah, we call it Tulip.
Okay, we call it Tulip. So beginning here, so we're all watching the panel in the audience, and it's pretty interesting because I didn't even record the panel. I assumed that the other people could handle it. I was more excited about getting the Nick Szabo recording. That's what I was into. And looking back at it later on in the day, we were all together in the hotel room, and Professor Joel Salerno and I were talking about this exchange right here, where they talked about the supercomputer Tulip, which was in the top 15 of supercomputers in the entire world. And this was before this was at the beginning of the Bitcoin scaling debate and that kind of thing. And everyone was like, well, I wonder what will happen if Bitcoin would scale, right? And one of the things we wanted to test this on was a supercomputer. And we were like, if only we had a supercomputer, we could simulate what would happen to the blockchain, and we could do all this analysis, and we could get some kind of an estimate on if it will scale and if it will fail, and doubling the blocks, and all these kind of questions could be tested on a supercomputer. And Professor Salerno, looked to me, and he'd seen the panel that we did together and stuff. I didn't know him or anything, but he was like, I wish you had been moderating that discussion, because I know you would have asked the follow-up question, what did you do with the supercomputer? What did it do? And later on, as we found out through newspapers and Wired magazine and things like that, he didn't even have the supercomputer. He didn't even buy it. Allegedly, and we want to be very careful here, we want to say allegedly a lot, but allegedly he took a grant money from the Australian government, said that he used it for a supercomputer, and I don't know what he used it for. It sounds like Back to the Future. They wanted a fission bomb, and I gave him a pinball parts, and he took the plutonium. So it was really interesting. This was my introduction to Craig Wright, and this was before he claimed to be Satoshi Nakamoto. And it was a really interesting addition to the Bitcoin scene. There's a little bit of curious history there with him and Bitcoin Belle, and I don't want to get into that too much, but she was very influential in the conference, very influential into getting him on that panel. As I told you, that panel was Edmund Moy from like Treasury or Fed, like legit guy, Trace Mayer, major investor, Nick Szabo, like that other guy that I forget, but still major panel, right? So Arthur, I'd like to get your opinion so far. What do you think about what I've talked about and just this very early beginnings of the Craig Wright story?
It's probably the same era where I learned about him, but I did not actually watch this when it happened back then. There is this funny anecdote that he sent out a tweet, I think the month before this happened, somewhere in October, that he has been testing on that supercomputer with gigamegs performance, and then when you read the ATO report that they visited his offices and checked his stuff, indeed those supercomputers never existed. So how it all happened and how he could even pretend to be doing something with a supercomputer, it's beyond me. But
and I think it's important to get the roots of this scam and where it came from. In the very beginning, this very first fact about Craig Wright, the first thing we learned that made him interesting is that he had a supercomputer, and that this very first fact was not true.
That was,
and it wasn't proven. And he got into this strange conference through Bitcoin Belle, maybe through a personal relationship. It's not for me to say, but still, that this is how you kind of worm your way into the Bitcoin, right? You kind of got to start from somewhere.
Shall I, in brief, tell the background how it all started, because that has been my specialty a little bit, and still people are a little bit shocked to hear, shocked or surprised to hear all this. But his scam actually started in the second half of 2013 already. That's where he did some Yeah, he created some forgeries about Bitcoin intellectual property. He went to the New South Wales Supreme Court. He got their signature that it happened as he wrote it down. There was the W&K from Dave Kleiman as a counterparty, but he already died, so he could not protest anymore. So what happened? On paper, he had some 56 million in Bitcoin IP. That grew further in early 2014, that he started carefully role-playing the Satoshi role. He and Dave were the team, and a third person that was not mentioned in the beginning. And that grew over the 2014. For example, the tulip story is from October 2014. He needed to pay $1.6 million in tax, and to avoid that, he bought an off-the-shelf company from 2011 called Tulip Trading Limited. And from there, he created several more forgeries where he put all his mining in, and it became lie on top of a false story and on top of another lie, and mixed with more forgeries, and that's how the whole
was it mainly localized to Australia at this point? Was he mainly operating? And you said that the court in New South Wales, the Tulip Company, was that an Australian company?
Yeah. Actually the Tulip Trading Limited was a Seychelles company. And he was, in those years, he was busy creating more and more companies. He already had a few, he created a few more, and it ended up, when we jumped to December 2015, just after this event with Szabo, he got raided by the ATO, because at that point they were totally fed up with him and his bookkeeping. He had I made calculations that he had roughly in $100 million in fake and false and fraudulent tax return claims thrown at the ATO. Yeah, and at some point, they raided him. They took all his companies and his bookkeeping, his records and his files. And it ended up that roughly 10 of those companies got folded, bankrupt, and and that's why he.
Now that seems like a good reason to leave Australia. It's not because you need power for your computer in Iceland, your computer that doesn't exist, but it sounds like all of this, the filings with the court, all of these companies, all of this pressure. Did he have some kind of a grant from the Australian government to get this computer? Was he tied in there? Is that why they raided him?
Yeah, it's a bit the other way around. You have to start doing things, so you have to have investors and already have found some money. And on paper, he had this money as the Bitcoin IP coming back from Dave Kleiman, his company that they had together in 2011, W&K. But it was used for totally different projects that they tried to land from the United States government. Which failed. They tried to get a few million from the U.S. government from Homeland Security. That was, they heard no 4 times, and it didn't happen after all. But he used that empty company after Dave's death. He used that company to pretend that he put in IP, and he wanted that IP back, and he valued it at $56 million. Well, it was worth nothing, because it was nothing. It didn't exist. So he created from thin air. He created 56 million, and that 56 million he pushed forward in several of those companies. It started with a handful, and it ended up with roughly 10, 12 of those companies, all doing something with Bitcoin. Well, there were actually a few companies having some personnel and etc. From there, he built the what is called the Hotwire Group, which was immediately bankrupt within in early 2000, I think April 2014. That went bankrupt because he didn't get the tax returns in time. And in 2015 he tried again with the Morgan Group, basically a repackaged Hotwire, and he tried even for more money. I remember 54 million in tax returns. But as far as we know, he didn't get much, and it ended up that they raided him, took his files. And
So mainly at this point, what kind of scam is he running? Is he not? He's not claiming to be Satoshi yet, but he's telling all these people he has Bitcoin. He has Bitcoin IP. Has he started the thing with the letter carrier?
2014 already. To the Kleiman family, he already pretended to be Satoshi, but I think he kept it rather low profile in 2014 and early 2015. Bitcoin Belle, he learned Bitcoin Belle, for example, I think in the first half year of 2015. I think she was a bit charmed, so to say, by him, but he was already telling her that he was Satoshi, and as far as I know, she believed him in the beginning. And
now a little background on Bitcoin Belle. She's a big libertarian, a big New Hampshire type person, free stater, very early Bitcoiner, very enthusiastic. She's written kind of a novel now. I haven't checked it out. We used to hang out. So she's a nice person. And I'm sorry she's all tumbled up in this, but it's a historical fact now. We have to talk about it. So they met. He tells her he's Satoshi. And then she has all these kind of connections because she's old, New Hampshire, old free stater, connected to all these Bitcoiners. And what happens next?
Yeah, I think Roger Ver, for example, was introduced to Craig with the line Bitcoin Belle, as far as I know. And Roger Ver is if you ask me, also an important figure, because up till 2018. Far in, I think, pretty close to the split up between BCH and BSV. Roger Ver was supporting Craig Wright also and endorsing him as Satoshi. But somehow he found, kind of luckily, he found out that Craig is indeed a con man, a liar and a fraud. And so Roger Ver said, bye-bye, I'm not going with you anymore. Yeah, but it grew on him. As far as I can see, Craig had needed to have an excuse for. But how do you have? How is it possible that you have so much Bitcoin? Because he already from the start, let's say 2013-14, he already started fooling around with hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin that he pretended to have. And the more you push him, the more he has to try to explain how did he get it. So it started in 2013, early 2014 with being an early miner, but already in February 2014 to the Kleiman family, he said already that, as far as I can see, a bit to test the water, I'm going to do a Satoshi role play. And it worked. And from there onwards, it worked with more people, and some people called him out, but he didn't care. And he did, because I have to give him that. He's pretty brazen in how he is acting. And
I heard this interesting story once. And again, it's just a story. I don't have a source, but I'd heard that someone talked to his mother once, and his mother explained to that person that Craig was the kind of person where if you said, hey, I like to play pool, he'd be like, I was the world champion of billiards when I was 12 years old. And if you say, hey, I like to swim, he would say, I'm a champion swimmer. I once won 3 gold medals in high school. And he was just that kind of boasting character. So he kind of drifted off the radar for a while. And then this huge article in Wired magazine. And again, Wired, the company that destroyed their Bitcoin that they mined, they actually got a Butterfly Labs miner. Then they intentionally destroyed it. And every year they're like, remember when we lost the keys to our Bitcoin? And it's like, no, you intentionally destroyed it. And you wrote an article about how smart you were to destroy it. And everyone else was like, you could donate that to the needy. You could help people. You could save it. You could buy your whole magazine in 10 years, which we all said to them and they all ignored. But anyway, Wired here has updated this headline because it used to just not have a question mark. It used to not say probably not. And it didn't say updated. It said, Bitcoin's creator is this unknown Australian genius. And then it just got crazy. I remember the day this article came out, my friends, everyone sent it to me. I started reading about it, started doing a show. My first idea was, again, always with this Satoshi news, I'm always like just calmed. I'm like, oh, it's great. We have a Satoshi. Like we can stop worrying about this now. The media can stop bugging us. He's got a computer science degree. Maybe he's a man of letters, all this kind of stuff. You think all these kind of positive thoughts because the mystery is over. The chase has ended. But then just like with Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto, which was also, I felt calmed with, I was like, this is great. We got a Satoshi. And then, 3 hours later, it all falls apart. The whole story falls apart. He just wants a free lunch. The same kind of thing here. Already that day, I was getting messages from a couple of my friends who were smarter than I was. And they were like, I don't know. This smells funny. It doesn't look right. So Arthur, what did you think when this article came out? Were you watching the Satoshi drama then?
Yeah, definitely. And although I did not interfere in the discussions back then, I was already active on Twitter. I was already in Bitcoin. I knew Bitcoin since 2012 and bought my first in 2013 before the big hype in later that year. But I already heard and knew about him. I read the articles. I did not have a firm opinion that I wanted to express, well, like I do now in the same way that I do now.
Generally, are you like me? Do you root for a Satoshi? Do you want the mystery to be over? Or are you satisfied 20 years, 30 years, 4 years, never found a Satoshi, never discovered?
I'm perfectly fine with that, actually. I hope that happens, because then at least Bitcoin, and the only one who is able at this moment to prove that it does not depend on a spiritual or financial or economical or political whatever leader. And as long as Satoshi stays away, and hopefully he is alive and he is happy with what's going on, and he sees that his project is flourishing as it should be with the three big groups, the users and the miners and the developers are always finding this equilibrium in how to move forward in a good and technical sound way. As long as he is happy, please stay out and prove that it is a decentralized project as it is.
I used to have a great graphic of that. I called it the Bitcoin triangle. And I was like, users, developers, miners, just like you're saying, they all have different goals. And then we had the big, rough up over the block size war and all that stuff. But yeah, I always think of that triangle. I have a diagram somewhere. But let's talk a bit about the idea of proof. You'd think that this would be pretty simple. Like I'm having an online mess around. It's a fun little debate I'm having with these CryptoPunks guys, where CryptoPunks, they made an art NFT and they made it in like September. And me and my guys, we made an art NFT in May of 2017. And it's no big deal. Like they're still in Christie's. They're still on the New York Times, on the Times Square billboards and everything. No one's going to take that away from them. They sold for millions of dollars. They're a great project. But the blockchain, unfortunately, the Ethereum blockchain, but the blockchain proves that my NFT project is older than their NFT project. It doesn't mean anything. I don't get $1 million or anything, but that's proof. It's on the blockchain. It is what it is. It is a fact, right? As far as I'm concerned. With this, you think it would be similar. You think it'd be relatively easy if Satoshi came back for him to prove with, I don't know, being able to sign a transaction, being able to move some Bitcoin, having maybe some early source code or some early documents, which is a little more fuzzy. But that stuff on the blockchain is tight, right? It's not like we're talking about Shakespeare and did Marlowe write his plays and we're analyzing this and he never went to Cornwallis and all this kind of things. Like, all not that. It's the blockchain, right? We should be able to relatively say if Satoshi kept any of his keys or any of his coins or any of the files that it would need to access this, he'd have it. If he destroyed all those things, which again, you might want to be Prometheus and walk away from this thing and not get your liver ripped out every day by a bird, pushing that rock up the hill forever. You have options, right? You're Satoshi Nakamoto. You're really clever. So if he just destroys everything and then he feels bad later, like, could that be a possibility? What do you think about these ideas of proof and just a generic Satoshi, what a generic would do?
No, yeah, that is what is sometimes rumored or said by the BSV fans and the Satoshi fans that he has to rebuild all his evidence. That's why he comes up with so many forgeries. Yeah, I think that's nonsense, because there should always be something that is genuine. There should be and will be. I mean, I have a little list of 4 things. If ever the real Satoshi pops up and wants and is willing to show himself to or herself, who knows, to the world, yeah, indeed, use a key to sign one of those blocks, one of those addresses that we are 100% certain. For example, the Genesis block is 100% certain that he did and created that one, and he should be, yeah, having the private key for that. What he also should have and could have, and still yeah, he should be able to have access to it, are the early emails with several Vaidai and Adam Back and well, name them, Hal Finney and all those OGs. And there are several, well, many actually, have never been released or made public. He should be able to, well, take, for example, Adam Back, but there are randomly several other examples, but let's take Adam Back. He can just show an email that he had back and forth with Adam Back. And if Adam Back says, yeah, true, see, I have the same email, well, then you have two people with good reputation talking with each other and confirming each other's existence. That would already be a good proof for me. He can log on to the P2P Foundation forum. He can log on to, no, likely not to Bitcoin Talk, but what other places can he log on to? He can match out, for example. I think, and post a mail message, for example. If those things will show, he can use his old PGP keys to sign messages, email messages. So 4 or 5 things I can already mention that if he is able to do 3 or 4 of them, and for one, he has a clear explanation. For example, like you said, if he is losing the private keys or destroyed them for a good reason, and he has a good excuse for that, yeah, I can accept that, but there will still 4 other things remaining that he can still and should be able to do. Now, going back to Craig Wright, he is spending millions, dozens of millions, to avoid an excuse for every single of those 5 points. It totally makes no sense.
It really doesn't. I mean, I understand part of it where I'd say, okay, I don't think Satoshi or anybody really wants to have those 1,000 Bitcoins or whatever there is, 100,000 Bitcoins, all the early ones. They're kind of good where they are. And if they moved, it would mess up the market. And, you know, I just don't know what you do with billions of dollars. But if he burned all those keys, they're all gone. They're, like you say, there's still 3 or 4 other ways, very easy, that he could prove that he was the one. Like the guys are saying, if he destroys all of his proof, what kind of scientist can prove something with false proof? Once you start making false proof, you're not a scientist anymore. You're not part of the intellectual discussion I think we're having here. I'm a historian. Other people are other things. They're trained in their disciplines to follow these rules. Like if I would quote things accurately as a historian. That's what I'm trained to do. Yeah. This guy should prove things. And if you were the Satoshi, but you didn't have the proof, why wouldn't you just chuckle? Like sit back and laugh. Eventually the proof's going to come along, because as good as you think you are, you probably left a key in there somewhere. You know, you left your name in there somewhere, like the story, at least allegedly, of the Dread Pirate Roberts, that back in the day, he was on forums saying, how do you start a really cool drug website with Bitcoin? And they found all those posts and they're like, oh, this, even if we didn't have all the other stuff, like the links and things, we've got these early posts where you're talking about doing this. Yeah. There's no way that Craig Wright didn't do that at some point, that he wasn't like talking about PGP or something with somebody on the internet, and it would easily prove, this thing. And also I think he'd want to prove it. If I was the real person, I wouldn't want to be unproven forever. I'd want to be proven. And it's just a very strange story as it happened.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I mean, if you look at what Craig is doing, he is partly using Bitcoin history and mixing himself in it, but he's also partly trying to rewrite Bitcoin history, and there it totally doesn't work. He's trying, for example, to bring back Bitcoin history to roughly to the year 2000, 1997 somehow, with something called Blacknet. No, that is a bullshit story, has been debunked from every angle possible almost. Then he tried to bring in Dave Kleiman with a lot of forged emails. Now, every single email with Dave Kleiman, Craig Wright related to Bitcoin, every single email, and there are dozens of them, have all been debunked, sent from domains that never existed, with PGP keys that has been used in 2014 after Dave Kleiman was already dead, with forged PGP keys. It's amazing how many types of forgeries he tried there to bring in Dave Kleiman as a team member in the Satoshi. Yeah, none of it stands. None of it stands. So yeah, it ended up that, especially after he started with his lawsuit, where Dave.
Well, and going to those forgeries just for a second. I'm not a lawyer, but if you make one forgery, you're a forger. If you make multiple forgeries, you're a mass forger, and your story just keeps getting worse and worse. Like doing nothing is better than forging documents. Why do this if you were the real person? Like it just.
No, the judges in Florida already said several times in their papers, inconceivable, and it's a word I will never forget anymore.
Well, and judges are very serious when they use a joking word like inconceivable from The Princess Bride. Like they're being serious about how ridiculous this is. But let's go on to one of the things that happened next, the kind of the Carnival of Proof. And this is again kind of another sad moment for Bitcoin, because we lose some really great Bitcoiners. John Matonis, early Bitcoin Foundation member, and Gavin Andreessen, the early programmer on Bitcoin, lead coder for a lot of the time that I was starting out with Mad Bitcoins and stuff. Got to meet him once in San Francisco, seemed like a really nice guy. But unfortunately, at least from our perspective here, it seems that Gavin and John Matonis both got fooled. So let's talk a little bit about this. As far as I know, Satoshi, or this guy, Craig Wright, starts saying that he's Satoshi Nakamoto. And then Gavin Andreessen, lead developer of the Bitcoin project at the time, which you would think would be a great witness, right? This is a person that could understand. If you show him some Bitcoin code, he'd be like, that's the code. If you showed him an older version of the code, maybe he'd be like, I could see how that's the code that led to the code. This is the code guy. But unfortunately, it seems like they use tricks and mirrors and things that maybe the code guy wouldn't think about to fool him. They bring in some kind of a laptop. They have some kind of a signature transaction. Gavin doesn't trace the origin of the laptop, so it could have been messed with. Gavin doesn't trace the Wi-Fi, so it could have been messed with. So there's all these external factors that just a basic security person would be like, well, if you want to prove this, we're going to go into a Faraday cage. We're going to go into a black box. We're going to get a Best Buy laptop that I've confirmed was shrink wrapped and never opened. We're going to use a new router. You're just going to eliminate all these kind of options. And instead, it seems that they did the proof in this open, wide open, loosey-goosey kind of way.
Did you know that they did this with what is called the Electrum wallet? And that can be hacked with 2 or 3 lines of code and make a fake signature. It's sad that it was possible, but it is not unlikely that Craig, because, well, of course he is not so technical, and then I'm being friendly, but he is somewhat technical and somewhat experienced with computer and a little bit of coding, and it looks like that he was able to find this leak in Electrum and used some DOS code to make fake signings possible with the Electrum wallet, and that is what has been found out for a while already, but it's possible that it happened that way, but yeah, it cannot be faked, of course, in a blog post, and that is also quite famous from that same era in May 2016. yeah, that blog post where he tried to bamboozle a bit around something that was assigned with some Sartre text. Yeah, it has been by every specialist in the field been debunked. And I remember reading Jonathan Beer, his book about the block size war. And he was also like, I've been scrolling through that article about the Sartre signing. This is just a guy trying to bamboozle everybody. This is just techno-babble, meaningless nonsense. And that's how he works. That's how he is impressing people who do not have the brains and the understanding of how to see through this nonsense what you're spouting on us. Because if you go back 2 or 3 sentences, it's already not correct anymore. It doesn't make sense. It's not coherent. I think that's the English word for it also. And yeah, that's his trick.
Now let's take this from Gavin's perspective, because again, Gavin's, you know, he's a normal guy. He's like me. He probably wants there to be Satoshi. He's probably really impressed. He's in this hotel room. He's looking at this computer and he's going to be proven something. So you're in the mode of accepting or not accepting. The, you know, buttons pushed, the things sent, the signature pops up. It says signature okay. And your option then is to be credulous and to say, well, this is true. You are Satoshi, you proved it. Or to be curious and be like, well, I'm not sure about this. Maybe we should look behind it. Maybe you should do it again. Maybe you should do it on my laptop. Maybe you should do it on Joe's laptop. You know, maybe just do it fine. Why does it matter? You could do it, you know, publicly. It does. And that's
it.
Strange that we don't get that. Right. Like you say, there's a blog post that's made and then the wider internet comes in, and you know how the wider internet is. They know everything, right? They've got an expert on this. They got an expert.
That's what's happening all the time. I mean, Calvin last year or at the start of this year, he at one point claimed that Craig is now doing signing sessions for groups of people. It's like, wow, amazing. Thousands of people already must have seen these guys signing. Why doesn't he do it in the public? Well, first of all, probably those signing for groups sessions never happened. And it's just another lie. But his tricks won't work in public because there are so many Bitcoin OGs and cryptographers and cypherpunks and people who can immediately see, yeah, sorry, this is fake. This is bamboozlement. This is...
It sounds like a magician. Like, I can do my trick for you, but only in a small group, in a pre-controlled environment where I use this special table and not a normal table, this table, you know, and it's so obvious. But again, we're living in this split and fractured society. A larger vision of this would be the Trump situation, where a similar con man with similar propaganda is fooling similar people. And I think a lot of this, if you really want to talk about it, goes back to propaganda was very effective in World War II. Advertising, Bernays, all those kind of people. And the thing to do with that, after you win World War II, you could sit back and you could say, well, that was really effective. We made the people hate the enemy. Maybe we should not do that again. Maybe we should teach the people to see the difference between propaganda and information. But that's not what they did, right? They said, this worked so well. How can we use this to sell things? And then selling things became very complicated and very much about controlling people, maybe more than they'd liked. And if you guys want to learn more about this, check out the films of Adam Curtis. Adam Curtis, he's an amazing documentary maker from the BBC, has access to their archives. He's got a new one now. Blows my mind every time. Just totally amazing. Detail, and a new way of thinking about it, that when you step back and you're like, oh yeah, this all kinds of makes sense when you look at it. And so, yeah, they have all these people now that are gullible to advertising, which essentially advertising is the same thing as propaganda. Propaganda is false information designed to make you think or feel something or believe something. Completely false, like a false stimuli. It's false. And Trump is a master of it. And he's out there fooling people. And now we have a split in our American society on masks, on the virus, on the election, on this insurrection at the Capitol. We have all these splits. And I think it's the same kind of thing, if you really want to look at, where one of them's fooling them with, you know, a big jet and a flashy car and a supermodel wife and all this kind of stuff. He's so rich and stuff. The other one's fooling them with, you know, these magician tricks and going behind the things and techno babble. And it's the same kind of thing where there's a portion of society, maybe some of them, they want to believe this, they want to be fooled, they're in on it, right? They're like, I know he's not Satoshi, but I want to make lots of money, right? There's those people. And then there's other people that I don't want to be mean to them, but they're easily led. They're fooled by propaganda.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the medical. Yeah, I don't have the medical background to be. Yeah, I have to make a guess here, but to me, it appears a bit that it has some cult-like features, many actually, religious-like outings also. But what I also notice is that, again, this is a bit of a guess. He is a kind of in a certain way, he is a father figure, and people who miss a real life Satoshi, who needs to have a mythical project like Bitcoin, conquering the world, and but it needs a father, a godlike figure, and he fulfills that role. So his fans, I expect many of them to have father issues, parental issues, having had a bad youth, and again, this is a bit of a guess, but it ends up being the flat earthers, and with a lot of conspiracy theories about many things that I'm like, whoa, do you really believe that? And you cannot even prove it. It's just that somebody has been spoon feeding you this nonsense, and you parrot it like it's the truth. But there's no proof for lizards and Blockstream doing this, and the developers having control over all the code, and it's amazing. It's really amazing what all kinds of conspiracy theories these people have. And a good example.
And this is a thing that can't be. This is a thing that can be proved. If Satoshi had the keys, he could sign the keys. So what can we say right now? We can say, well, we can't say that we can say that, we can say he's not Satoshi. I mean, I think basically we can say, because you don't have the keys, you're not Satoshi. If you do have the keys, you could prove you were Satoshi. We can also say that everyone else is not Satoshi. We all don't have the keys. Like, until someone shows up with the keys, there's no one to say. So I don't know how they could go from that to say, maybe he's Satoshi because of this. Maybe he's Satoshi. Well, no, either you prove it with the keys or you don't. And if he had anything else, early code, early emails, like you said, these various things, it's very provable. And I don't know how you could side on this other side where it's like, I don't have the proof, but I believe him anyway.
Yeah, but that's totally against the Bitcoin spirit also.
yeah. The whole point of Bitcoin is like the trustless nature of the thing, don't trust, verify. Like it's right there in like the code, like faith in numbers, all the early slogans, all the things everyone talked about, all the programmers, the open source nature, the debate over each little code addition. All of this is factual on paper. But again, I don't think it's the programmers that got fooled. I don't think it's the cypherpunks or those people. I think there was a lot of these other people that are around Bitcoin that maybe, like you're saying, this cult idea, the religious idea, not just a father figure, but also being in a group. Like, you're one of the ones that believes in Satoshi. So therefore you have all these friends now who also believe in Satoshi, and you can all have groupthink together, and you can be in a little, like we're saying with the information, you can be in your own information zone where you only get information that you agree with. You could even now go to conferences and find people you agree with, and other speakers and other YouTubes and all these things. I remember we had a guy, Szabo, Spain. He left for, I think it was BSV or maybe BCH. I don't even remember anymore, but totally normal Bitcoin guy, all like on the up and up. And then all of a sudden he flipped some switch and he's like, BSV is the god, blah, 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 and like all these videos. And he did pretty well because it's a whole subculture and a whole community, and they needed somebody, and he had some skills and that kind of thing. But as far as having the proof, he never had it. They never had it. I don't know. Maybe it was just like a LARPing, like a fun, like, let's pretend that we're in this Satoshi crew. And then it's kind of, you get into it, you get into the idea. It's a very strange, a psychological type phenomenon.
Yeah. It will be a study, and it's a study, a field of study. For somebody who's more experienced with it. I'm more into the debunking of the straightforward lies and forgeries. And that's why I already know if you build up, it starts with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 lies and forgeries. And now we already have hundreds and hundreds of lies and forgeries that are known and debunked thoroughly. And yeah, the only thing that he has been proving is a negative. You're only proving more and more and more that you're not Satoshi. So that's if he needs a Nobel Prize, it's going to be for proving a negative.
So after the Carnival of Proof with Gavin Andreessen and John Matonis, and they come out with full-throated support that this is Satoshi, I believe him, I'd stake my son's life on it, all that kind of stuff comes out. And then there's the backlash, right? He tries to prove it on the mailing list, he tries to prove it publicly, and the proof doesn't stand up. All the real cryptographers don't buy this, they don't trust the key. What happens next?
When you mean in 2016, we now arrived in 2016. Yeah, that was when afterwards in 2017 and 18 were the years that he was slowly, recouping himself a bit for in the BCH community. But at some point, early 2018, it was somewhat decided in the background, probably with Kelvin Ayre involved also, that they should have their own token. You should not forget, by the way, that in 2015 it was Kelvin Ayre and two other guys, Stefan Matthews and Robert McGregor, who have been bailing out Craig Wright from the ATO, from the tax fraud era. And it means that I have to say I cannot fully prove it with documents, but I know that Craig has been emailing in that already in June when Kelvin was involved. He already told Kelvin that he had money in the Tulip Trust, those, well, 1 million Bitcoin, so to say. And we don't know if afterwards, after he told Kelvin, if Kelvin tried to get a stake or he took a loan from those Tulip Trust from Kelvin as a collateral or something. We are not 100% sure, but it makes sense if something happened back there that based on the Tulip Trust Bitcoin, Kelvin keeps on sponsoring him. Now, at some point, it might have happened. Again, this is a bit of a guesswork. It might have happened that Kelvin starts pushing that he wants to see more and more evidence and probably also money back from the patents, from the copyright, from the database, from the Tulip Trust, whatever stories Craig has been telling Kelvin. And Craig needed to have his own controllable environment, BSV, because then he could
before we go to BSV, let's do BCH. So there was a big scaling debate, went on for years, whether we should make the block size bigger or whether we should do other things, and whether we should adopt technology like SegWit, which allowed to link to transactions and things like that. Eventually it was kind of unofficially discovered that there was an ASIC boost bug that perhaps Bitmain was taking advantage of to mine faster and get more money, and that they were just stalling in the block size war. They didn't want SegWit to be adopted because every day that SegWit wasn't adopted, they made more money. So all you had to do was stall months and months and months. Everyone's like having this intellectual debate. What should we do? And presumably the biggest player is just, we should get them to wait. We should get them to wait. And it's a dishonest way of arguing, right? It's not intellectually true. And so all of that builds, and then this guy comes along and he says UASF, and he says if the nodes signal UASF, then we just adopt this thing and we just run through this and we're done. And he put a line in the sand. He said, if everyone's on board, let's do it. Let's do it. And then somehow everyone got motivated. We all turned it around. Everyone agreed UASF. And the Bitcoin adopted the upgrade. But right before that, and I'm not exactly sure who did this, I'm pretty sure it was the Bitmain guys, they readied a copy of Bitcoin in case they wanted to use it as an alternative. And this was where BCH kind of gets its start. And this
Yeah,
fork
yeah,
happened. This copy's there. I don't know that Bitmain was the one that activated it. Like it was kind of like it was there lying on the shelf, and then someone activates it, and then pretty soon we have two versions of Bitcoin. For potential confusion with the brand name, attempted, takeover of the brand name, which would have been bad if you go to Coinbase and you buy Bitcoin, but it's really Bitcoin Cash, and you send it to your Bitcoin wallet and it doesn't work and you lose all your money. Like disastrous brand confusion, like money lost, which happened anyway. But so this happens. Now there's two Bitcoins. Roger Ver is with this Bitcoin Cash Bitcoin. This Craig Wright is with this Bitcoin Cash Bitcoin. And they've got all these, great friends sitting around the table. And it's just like Reservoir Dogs. Like I can trust them. It's a gang of criminals. There's no one you can trust better than a gang of criminals.
Yeah, amazing period. It was actually for me, for following Craig Wright, I lost a little bit of interest in him because he was not so much in the media, and it looked like that he had lost the, how do you say this? He lost the media attention for being Satoshi. That he only started it up, of course, with BSV later. So the most remarkable moment that I remember from the BCH era was when when Craig Wright started to promote, believe it or not, more anonymous and let's call it anonymous transactions. And in later years, he totally turned around about anonymity and private transactions and how did he call it? Transactions not hidden, but almost something like that.
Like confidential transactions.
Alternative for the anonymous that participants can be anonymous, as Satoshi said. Which makes sense from a fungibility standpoint, but Craig wanted to introduce that on BCH, and that was the big plan, and they were supposed to do that within I think 3, 4, 5 months. I remember May or something. It never happened, but that's another story. But at least that was for me a remarkable point, especially because in later years he changed his tune dramatically about the same subject.
So he's with these BCH guys. They've got their own coin. They can do anything they want. Obviously, you can count on him to write the code for those confidential transactions himself. He'll take care of that. But what happens next? What's the straw that breaks the camel's back, where they say, all right, enough of this BCH. It's BSV time.
Yeah, that was in late 2018. The exact breaking points, what was being discussed behind closed doors. I remember Craig running away from some meeting with miners or something. And he pretended to be angry about something. And to be honest, I don't know the details, because again, that is more the political games that are being played. And I'm more into, does this connect with that? Is it a lie or is it a forgery? And that is a bit my specialty. The politics, how and why and which dates that exactly happened. Please forgive me. I'm not so good in those dates.
So now they've got their own coin. They've got Bitcoin SV, which stands for Satoshi's Vision. So we're putting the brand name in the brand now, and it's pretty much Calvin Ayre and Craig Wright that are the supporters of BSV, who have broken off from Roger Ver and maybe Jihan Wu. I don't know if Bitmain's still supporting BCH at this point. I know he was an early supporter of BCH. He was kind of on the fence, and then he went for it for a while. But so what does this give them now that it's just Calvin and Craig? Do they have can they make their own Bitcoin? Can they print more Bitcoin? Do they get early Satoshi coin somehow?
The deal that was made in 2015 was that the guys, the people sponsoring Craig Wright and bailing him out from Australia, they were promised to become literally billionaires on the still to be written patents and the copyright on the Bitcoin stuff. And that for that reason, I think that is also part of the background why they needed to have their own chain, so they could control things more. And the moment they start to have patents and start to do patent trolling, then they hope to attract more apps and developers on their own chain, because they are being forced to use the free patents within the environment of BSV, and otherwise I'm going to sue you, and or you have to pay a large license fee. That was, I guess, well, what else do you do with a patent to make money?
And this is obviously such a Satoshi thing to do. The person who gave us Bitcoin, donated the code, left the community, didn't spend this billions of dollars. He would be the one who would come back and entrap you in a patent scheme, because that all of the character, all of the writing, all of the everything we know about Satoshi says that guy with the patent scheme, that seems like Satoshi to me. And wouldn't you just break off if you join the cult? You got this far, and I know cults are hard to get out of. It's a complex thing, but you join the cult, and then the guy's like, I got a genius idea. Like, I invented this whole thing, and we're gonna sue them. We're gonna sue them out of business. That's how we're gonna make money. By golly, I'm a genius. How could you keep following this guy? You got nothing.
Nee, that's why it's totally beyond me that when I meet those people online, especially on Twitter, and they start talking about patents to me, and how can you even defend a Satoshi having patents? It's so, you have to have a pretty weird brain damage to be able to understand that Satoshi, he would never do patents or anything like it when he puts the code open and wide and for everybody to see on, where did it start? SourceForge and later on GitHub. And no, yeah.
Well, and I don't think I'm a radical cypherpunk here or anything, but I'm against the entire idea of software patents. I don't even think there should be a thing. I think you should be able to write the code and do what you want to do. And I think there's a lot of other people on that cypherpunk mailing list back in the way who feel the same way. And I think Satoshi would be one of them. So yeah, it's a very shocking thing to see that the plan is to make money with
anecdote about that, and that involves, and I'll mention him again, Adam Back. He wrote, for example, on the cypherpunk environment, he wrote the so-called anti-license. So the first release of Bitcoin fell under the so-called anti-license, and there is a non-litigation chapter in that anti-license, and that was the environment where Satoshi was releasing and spreading his information and releasing the code and the white paper and everything, and a bit later it fell under the MIT license. And now you have Craig Wright demanding and claiming to have the copyright, and now he wants to pull the plug from bitcoin.org and that they should not have the white paper anymore. It's yeah, I'm speechless.
Wait, I think I got the perfect meme for this. Let me go to this. It's like he has a little sign and he's going around, but his would say, "I am not Satoshi," because he just keeps proving it. He just keeps going around place to place. I am Satoshi, but everything that he does proves the opposite. Yet still thousands, tens of thousands of people believe him. Still, these coins are going on. Still, these large companies are being scammed, and these lawyers and these people who don't understand the technology, who don't understand the details, and who have been bamboozled. And again, really, really good con men like Trump, or allegedly like Craig Wright, they're great at talking. They're great at making you feel good and making you feel like you're the most important person in the world, and also that you're meeting with a genius. You're meeting with the smartest person in the world who's thought of everything, and that everything's going to be fine just as soon as you give me the money that I want. And then things are never fine and you never get the money back. But it's just very strange to see this go on. And now, it's been years now. There's been all these different coins, all these different things, and still no proof, no signatures, no early code, no early emails, nothing, right?
No, he was supposed to have the Tulip Trust 1 million bitcoins in January 2020, and the cult, the BSV cult, is still alive, and we have never seen one BTC move being signed whatsoever after January 2020.
Now a little bit about that. That was kind of like that scene in Back to the Future 2, Back to the Future 3, where Doc Brown sends a telegram from 1880 to 1986 to Marty. And Marty's supposed to meet the telegram guy at an intersection at a certain time, at a certain date, and that the telegram guy will come. And this time the telegram's not information about Doc and how he's traveled back in time. The telegram is somehow, again, it's a mystery to me, but it's like part of the key, or it's a map to find the key, or it's a derivation of the key through math or something. I don't know. But the keys and the things you need to find the keys are in this magical envelope that the Tulip Trust or something has, and they're going to give it to you at the corner of 4th Street and Elm Street in Chicago, Illinois at 5 p.m. on Thursday, January 20th, 2020, and it's raining. And the guy's there and he's like, the boys at the office didn't think there'd be anybody here, especially somebody meeting your description. And so we're all waiting, right? We're waiting for this special day where the envelope's going to come and the keys are in there. And this is going to change everything. And if you're a BSV, you're like, oh, this is my moment, right? This is my, space alien landing. This is it. And it doesn't happen. And there's no keys and there's no telegram and there's no meeting and no one even goes to 4th and Elm Street. So Craig doesn't even go.
And the more technical cult members of in the BSV environment for months, and they're still doing it. They're still checking the blockchain for Satoshi coins moving. And the moment they think that, do you see them tweet and everybody responding, this might be Craig, this might be. It's so sad. It's so sad.
Well, we have the same parallels here in the United States, where the secret conspiracy led by Q was supposed to have a big reveal on this day, and Trump was supposed to become president, and all these things are supposed to happen. And it didn't happen. And it keeps not happening. And all of Q's predictions are all false. And the pedophile basement in the pizza place, there's no basement. There's just no basement. Like, it's like, how more fake can you be? Like the classic Pee Wee Herman movie, like your bicycle's in the basement of the Alamo. There's no basement in the Alamo. His bicycle's not there. Like, wake up. Like, what more can it take? Like, boom, boom, boom. Fake, fake, fake. Like, nothing true. All this stuff. But again, if you're trapped, you're in a cult, you've been brainwashed, you want to believe this, you have things that happened to you in your past, you were paid. There's all kinds of reasons why you keep believing this, publicly. But the minute you get them backstage, they're like, that Q is ridiculous. Like the Republican senators, they're like, I can't believe what Trump said on Twitter, blah, blah, blah. But you go outside and they're like, oh, I think he's a great president. Oh. Yeah. It's the same thing, the same microcosm in our community and the larger communities. We just need to train people critical thinking. It's a matter of a failure of critical thinking, I think, where people are not taught to break through sources, to question things, to challenge things. I grew up in like a debate environment, so I was always
many of them will end up in I mean, there are a few examples, and well, actually there's one famous example in the BSV community, and sometimes of course all the hardcore, the really hardcore, they all have me blocked on Twitter, but of course there you can move around a little bit, and then I check them out sometimes just to see what is going on in that camp. But there's one of those guys. He came straight from BitConnect, from one scam to the next, and you can take his lies from BitConnect, and when you confront him, you're being immediately blocked. But and he will still use the same tricks in BSV. And why? No idea. Just for the fame and the name, I guess. But it's the same type as Craig. He just he makes up a lot of bullshit, rather easy debunkable stories if you do not take them at face value. And the moment you only take them at face value, you're, oh, wow. And that he is so clever. And with all the, it's almost the same type as Craig. Also, a lot of pretending to have done things and meet people. And
Well, remember, he's a swimming champion and he's great at pool and he's a chess master and he can stand on one foot and he knows Arabic.
Ninja,
Right.
he knows 12 types of martial arts, and he's a Michelin star chef. It's amazing what this Craig has all been saying all these years. Yeah,
Phenomenal, man. It's like Zelig. He's just everybody to everything. He's everywhere. It's like Forrest Gump.
but it
He just
goes.
blows to thing to thing, you know.
The shocking thing is, most of those people they experience those things in a bit kind of superficial way. I mean, they do not hear and read and see the whole picture. When they come across an anecdote like Craig is reading 6,000 books per year and he is doing 12 studies at 6 different universities. Like,
I just
wow,
remember Kim Jong-un, he once hit a hole in one.
But then if you also combine that with, but he is writing 50 white papers per year, he is writing hundreds and hundreds of patents per year. He is doing coding or whatever. If you put it all together, if you put several sources together, what Craig has been telling in this environment, in this environment, in this environment, then it's like, wow, you're a 5,000 man army all by yourself. It's just not possible. So yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing, but these people keep on believing.
And now it's been 5 years and we have 3 different Bitcoins at least, probably more.
No, we only have one.
I know we really have one, but there's 3, there's a bunch of copies and it confuses people.
Yeah.
But so where does it go from here? Does this just keep going? Obviously he can't prove it. We can't disprove it. You can't prove a negative, right? You can't be like, well, we have proof that he is not, but we don't have any proof that he is. And he certainly hasn't put any proof forward that stands up that he is. Does this just keep going? Does he keep claiming that he's Satoshi forever?
No, but what I think, hope, but also kind of pretty sure, there's 2 things on this. There is a way, like the ATO did in 2016, when they sort of nullified all his tax dealings and brought out their reports about his companies and the things he has been doing. And there is a famous quote that I take from one of those reports, and it's called "Nullity Based on Sham." And the moment they just, Craig, what you have been telling us, it doesn't exist and it never happened and it will never happen, and it's nothing. It's a nullity based on sham. And that made the ATO realize, and that reached the press in Australia also, that the quote, "We firmly believe that Craig Wright is not Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, the inventor of Bitcoin." Just based on, there is no evidence. We have to nullify everything and what he is telling us and what he is saying and what he is doing. And that made them reach this conclusion. And that makes total sense for everybody who is going through these reports. And there's no way that you cannot come to that same conclusion, so to say. And going forward, I think his end game has started this year in January, when he started to rant with nuclear Armageddons, and I'm going to make life of all the developers miserable, etc., etc. And you saw him ramp up several.
I remember that he had like a ticking clock. He was like, next year I will break all Bitcoin transactions.
Yeah.
On this day, I will reveal magical code that no one knows about that breaks everything.
Fatal flaw, and I will bring SegWit down, and the Lightning Network I will pull apart. And he has been saying a lot of things. But the thing is, he kept his word that he was starting to do those lawsuits. The libel suits started, still running against Peter McCormack and Hodlonaut. And now he ramped it up with Cobra Bitcoin for the white paper. But you now also see that people are getting irritated. So Copa is now chasing him for the copyright. He has now this case against the developers. And probably that's it almost. There are so many now because it.
And again, just going back to the analogy of the person we have here in the United States, who just a few days ago it was announced that the New York district attorneys are opening up a grand jury against former President Donald Trump for his business dealings and other things. And it's the kind of thing where it's the stuff everyone's been saying all along. All along, they've been saying his taxes, he's hiding something. And it takes years and years and years. But just like with Craig Wright, his lack of proof, he's hiding something. Eventually, hopefully, and we're still not sure yet, the legal system takes care of it. The gears of justice grind. Like you say, we have that statement from the Australian court. He is, to our knowledge, he's not Satoshi Nakamoto, like you said. Maybe we need one of those from the US court, from the UK court eventually. And again, he's going to ride this out. He's going to go jurisdiction by jurisdiction. They're going to have to probably boot him from each one of these jurisdictions, or eventually he'll screw up and actually break a law. And then who knows, maybe he'll end up in jail.
Yeah, the hard part is because for me, it's pretty clear the guy is a con man. He's a total fraud in everything he's doing. But the thing is, you have to catch him in court and nail him down on this fraud. And when he is suing 16 developers, that case should make an 180 degrees turn to be pushed back to him, and it takes some effort. A judge has to rule for that, but it first takes the 16 developers case, where he is trying to get his 110,000 Bitcoin that was supposedly hacked from his house. Yeah, I can already tell you that never happened. That whole case is full of forgeries. I've seen from one of the developers. I've seen the whole package that they received. It's stuffed with forgeries, lies, and things, so that it will explode in his face. I'm already 100% sure. But we will learn. But after that, it should be a judge saying, "Yeah, sorry, but what you are trying here is just fraud, and now I have to make it a criminal case, and from going from a civil case to a criminal case, and push it back in his face." And that takes so much time. As far as we know, he is probably also also under criminal investigation of the ATO. In 2018, he was. We're 100% sure. We've seen the letters pop up in Climate versus Right lawsuit that some Melanie something was asking the Climate Council some questions. So yeah, but is that has that how do you call that, ended? That criminal investigations? We don't know. But
it sounds very similar to the
game has started. There are so many cases running now. It only takes one. The Hodlonaut case, the McCormack case, the Dev cases, Cobra case, Copa case, all kinds of cases. It only takes one where the dice is not rolling in his favor anymore.
And it can be so taxing for the people involved in this, the legal fees. It's similar to the case of like a patent troll, where they're largely funded and they buy a bunch of patents and they go around trolling people. There was a major case recently where Joe Rogan, the podcaster, was attacked by one of these trolls, and they attacked him because they said they owned a copyright of putting podcast episodes in order on an RSS feed. And it seems very absurd. Again, I'm against all software patents here. So having that be a patent is just patently ridiculous, right? It's absurd. It's an obvious idea that you would put something in a list on an RSS feed and do a podcast. Mm-hmm. But these trolls have bought these bad patents, and they can go around usually, and they can shake down these smaller players. And it's better for you to pay a couple $1,000s than to try to fight this with legal fees and years and years and years. And in this case, what happened is they picked on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan was well funded. So he got lawyers and he got other people, and they all went back on him. They attacked the patent trolls. And then what you really need to do is keep attacking them, because they have a bunch of other patents and they're trolling a bunch of other people, and you have to kind of run them out. But again, years and millions of dollars in legal fees to fight this, and tons of people's time in the court and in the journalists, and all of this to someone who hasn't provided any proof. And it's been 5 years.
Yeah. But I don't see another 5 years going anymore. BSV and especially Craig Wright in the Bitcoin arena will be gone within that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure about that. Like I said, his end game has started. There's too much. You can already see it in his face. It's taking its toll. He's looking unhealthy. He's not doing well anymore. So either he is going to Antigua or another place where he is hiding and taking his last few millions from Calvin and lives a happy life, or he goes to jail within a few years. That is, if you ask me, that should, if justice is being done, that is what should happen. But yeah, he has rich friends, so he can easily take a cab or a boat to another country.
Well, you know how it is. One day you're on top of the world, you're the leader of Germany, and the next day you shoot yourself in the head in an underground bunker. So we'll just have to see how it turns out. And he had lots of enablers and lots of people that helped him along the way. And it's been a very interesting story in Bitcoin, but eventually I think it has to end. And so too does this interview. So Arthur, where can people check out your work? Tell us a little bit about your Twitter. Let me see. And then I'm going to do some memes at the end. So
yeah. If you, I think most of your viewers will already follow me. But if you're new to me and you're interested in the subject, I post quite regularly, probably a handful of times a day, because I can quickly look up things. I'm pretty handy on a computer. It does not take, sometimes it takes a lot of time, of course, but my legacy kit, maybe you can get it in the screen. My legacy kit is where is my name on Twitter, and there you will find all my posts about BSV and but especially about Craig Wright. What I'm doing since years, indeed, as you said, for 2-3 years already now, is I map out all his lies and frauds, and my aim with that, I call it a hobby. It is sometimes time consuming, especially when I need to read court papers, but it's for the benefit of people who are interested to know the real story of Craig Wright and who don't want to fall in the traps of the BSV cult. And I also have many lawyers following me, so I know from the sidelines that my stuff is also being used by people who are fighting him in court.
Well, thank you, Arthur, for doing this. I know it's a volunteer work. You don't get thanked very often, but I do really appreciate this. It's good for the Bitcoin community to have someone to push back against this. Just
I call myself the sniper in the backyard of Bitcoin.
Well, that's it. And everyone here on Bitcoin's a volunteer. No one came to you and said that you must be the one to help track down these frauds. No one came to me, told me to start doing Bitcoin shows. Everyone does what they can.
Not by any council, not by any Lightning Labs or Blockstream or MasterCard or whatever conspiracy theory they're throwing at me. I live off donations to do this, and yeah, in fact, because now with all the lawsuits and I post regularly about it, I see, on a weekly or sometimes on a daily basis, I see a few euro, well, in this case, BTC coming in. So thank you everybody who is doing that, and my legacy kit on Twitter. Follow me if you like.
And we've got a link in the description below, right on this YouTube page. Go out there and follow Arthur, learn more about what Craig Wright is up to. Hopefully, like you say, we're reaching the end of this. But before that, Julian Assange says, wait, I have one more thing to say. Craig Wright is not Satoshi.
Yeah, golden oldie.
For my next amazing trick, I will move this coin. It would be just that easy. You claim you are Satoshi. Your lack of evidence determined that was a lie.
Yep.
Little Maury Povich there. And here he is with the I am Satoshi sign. Obviously, if you were really Satoshi, you wouldn't need a sign. It's pretty obvious. And the classic, I will not impersonate Satoshi Nakamoto. Very funny stuff. And there's just great memes out there. There's also breaking news that Craig Wright has confirmed that he is the real J.K. Rowling and that Craig Wright wrote the book Harry Potter. So impressive news to end on. Thanks so much, Arthur, for joining us today. Everyone be sure to give us a thumbs up and a subscribe down below. This is the World Crypto Network. We do these kind of things all the time, and it's great to have you guys here. Thanks to everyone for joining us. It looked like there were some interesting discussions going on in the chat. So I welcome all the BCHers and BSVers. I look forward to your comments. You could give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It doesn't matter. YouTube is just looking for some interactivity there. So either way, it's great. But thanks so much for watching us. We'll be back with the Bitcoin group tomorrow afternoon around this same time, 1 o'clock Pacific time. So thanks so much for joining us. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.